Greetings, listeners. Welcome to Consulting Between Friends. I am your host, Michael Holmes Jr. The last episode was about redistricting and how it's important to know about it. I also mentioned what is coming up next, since this is a continuation of the topic. As mentioned, the next big part is gerrymandering. I will discuss where the word comes from and explain what it is. As well, different organizations who are working hard to protect people's voting rights. To bring everything together for understanding, I will be interviewing a Louisiana State Representative by the name of Kyle Green Jr. of District 83 on questions regarding redistricting and gerrymandering. The topic is how redistricting affects the population in a state. Part 2. We will return after a message from our sponsor. Everyone is always planning things, and advertising is needed to make it happen. So, if it's personal or business, let Pinpoint Designs and Images solve that problem. With Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC, you will receive quality work and professional service at a great price. The service that is offered: flyers, business cards, programs, invitations, photo books, ad booklets, and much more. Michael Holmes Jr., owner/principal designer of Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC. Contact me by email or social media. Email address is pinpointdesignsandImages@gmail.com, and Instagram Pinpoint Designs, and Facebook Pinpoint Designs and Images. We are back. The word gerrymandering has a history behind it. The origin of the word is actually someone's name. The person's name is Albert Gerry. Albert Gerry was the governor of Massachusetts in 1812. During his term in office, Gerry created a cartoon making fun of how lawmakers drew state Senate lines to create a district to keep opposing minorities without status. When he drew the cartoon, the image was a shape of a salamander, and this image became popular among legislators in office. Gerry was providing a point how lawmakers were drawing state Senate lines to benefit the person or party in office. After creating this cartoon, this concept was accepted by lawmakers. The word gerrymandering was formed from two words. The first word was gerry, and the second word was salamander. After combining both words, the name gerrymandering was created. The definition of gerrymandering is when the opposing party of lawmakers decides to dilute the number of votes in a state. Dilute is when lawmakers group a person's vote by demographic and population status of people. This will affect the population of a group of people in a state. This usually affects the minority population, which is people of color. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 outlaws the racial discrimination towards any person of color the right to vote. This law was referring to the black people of color who were denied the right to vote. There are organizations who are fighting to protect voting rights. These organizations educate people on the process of voting and the importance of voting overall. Here is a list of different organizations who are fighting to protect the person's right to vote. 1. America Civil Liberties Union, known as ACLU. 2. LDF, Defend, Educate, Empower. 3. NAACP. 4. League of Women Voters. 5. Brennan Center for Justice. 6. Fair Fight. 7. All on the Line. 8. Fair Vote. 9. Black Voters Matter. 10. Voice of the Experienced, known as VOTE. 11. The Power Coalition. 12. E Pluribus Unum. After a short break, we will return. Before the interview begins, I want to give you a background on how I know State Representative Kyle Green Jr. Kyle Green Jr. has been a state representative of Louisiana for 2 years. First, I know Kyle Green Jr. from different community events such as Night Out Against Crime. Second, we both live in the same neighborhood, and Kyle Green Jr. enjoys meeting people in the neighborhood. Kyle Green Jr. works hard to inform the public on different situations in the community. For instance, Hurricane Ida, Kyle was assisting in the community on the recovery efforts of the hurricane with other public officials. Also, Kyle Green Jr. assisted in the COVID-19 efforts to inform the public in the community. Kyle Green Jr. continues to inform the public of the importance of redistricting. Kyle Green Jr. has been a lawyer for 6 years and is a civil law personal injury attorney. He's a graduate of Southern University with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and A&M College with a law degree from Southern University Law Center. He's a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity and company. Kyle Green Jr. is married and has a beautiful family with 2 girls and 2 boys. My guest for today is Kyle Green Jr., State Representative, District 83. Now, welcome Kyle Green Jr. to Consulting Between Friends.
Thank you, Mike, for having me. I really do appreciate it.
I'm glad you appreciate it. I know we've been knowing each other for a good while, and I'm glad you was able to participate in this interview process.
Yes, I'm happy, and I'm also happy to discuss redistricting because it's something that is near and dear to my heart, something that I think everyone should pay close attention to, especially over the next couple of weeks as the legislature convenes to undertake the process of redrawing the political lines for various offices respective to our state.
I like how you just explained that. Before we go ahead and start the interview, I want to ask you, how was your day?
Day was great. Every day that I'm on this side of heaven is a good day. Was able to, take care of some business with regards to my law practice, tie up some loose ends before, as I kind of shut things down, beginning February 1st to February 20th for a redistricting session. Then, we have basically a 3-week reprieve before we start back up for the regular session, which starts in March and lasts until June.
Oh, I see you have a busy schedule coming ahead. And you're also a family man. So how's your family doing?
Family's doing well. They keep me very active. They also keep me busy. Got 4 little ones, ages of 8, 6, 5, and 4. So my rugrats keep me active.
Yes, they do. Well, we're about to get ready and get started.
Look forward to it. Let's go.
Thank you. Looking forward to it as well. This is going to be really good. What is redistricting and why it is important?
Well, that's a great question, Mike. Redistricting is the process of drawing lines of districts from which people like myself, elected official, are elected. We typically run in what's called districts or election districts. And every 10 years, the Constitution and the courts require us to basically redraw those district lines to account for the population shifts that have occurred over the prior 10 years. In some districts, there may have been a population gain or population loss. So for me, I'm a state representative. And there's a certain number of citizens that we're supposed to have in each district because the law requires there be one man, one vote. And so no one person's vote should count more or less than any other person's vote. But people are transient. We travel, we move, we die, we're born. And so the 10-year period has to account for that shift. So we go in and retweak the lines to account for those shifts to make them balanced.
Okay, well, you mentioned balance, which I know balance is important. But sometimes it's not really balanced at all. Like you mentioned about like the population. So you said it also is a number of people supposed to be like in a district. So about what is the number it's supposed to be in a district of people?
So in my case, as a member of the House of Representatives, the ideal district is somewhere around 44,000, I think 390 people per district. And, you're correct when I say balance, because balance, when I mean balance, I'm saying strictly based on population. But there has also been talk amongst regards to what's fair. Because just
Mm-hmm.
because something's balanced, everybody has the same number of people, doesn't necessarily mean it's fair.
Correct.
Because you can have the same number of people in each district, but if the districts are skewed in a manner which discriminates or adversely impacts, one group's ability to elect people from their community or have a certain level of representation amongst other groups of the population, I guess when those are diminished, then that's not necessarily fair.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's what we're looking at. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, what we do to try to tweak the lines to make them balanced, but also fair.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now, when I know when they mention say lines on a map, it is kind of funny how it's kind of drawn. It's not straight lines. It's all over the place. So, can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Yes. So you're correct. Our districts, the lowest common, I guess, denominator for districts are precincts.
Mm-hmm.
You group precincts together, and those precincts together will form a district, any district
Mm-hmm.
for that matter, whether it's for a
Yes.
state legislative race, a congressional race, a judicial race, you name it. Precincts are the lowest, basically the lowest element when it comes to districts.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those precincts have borders, and those borders it could be anything. It could, well, not anything. It could be a street border. It could
Mm-hmm.
be a natural border, such as a river or a bayou or a creek or a canal. Um, it could, we have borders of the Gulf of Mexico. We have state lines that,
Mm-hmm.
will be a border because we can't draw districts that go into another state. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of why sometimes when you see the district maps, you see sometimes squiggly lines and
Mm-hmm.
odd looking shapes. That accounts for that.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense because that is kind of confusing when you kind of look at it. It's like it's the lines are just all over the place. As a state representative, how does redistricting affect your district?
Well, it affects it a lot because if my population, if in my district, which is the 83rd House district, the district I'm fortunate to represent, if over the past 10 years that district has gained a significant amount of population and I'm above the ideal district number, then I have to lose precincts. My
Mm,
district has to basically shrink, and I have to give up areas of my community that probably have become accustomed to me representing them. It can drastically change the dynamics of the district politically. On the other side, flip side to that coin, is if I've lost population, then I have to expand the district, basically going pick up new precincts, new areas of population to get me to the ideal population number, which means I'm having to introduce myself to new areas of the community that I'm not necessarily familiar with, and they aren't necessarily familiar with me. That could have a political outcome as well. So it's very important. You know, it has a huge impact on my district. Thankfully, over the past 10 years, my district didn't suffer very much population loss. We are basically around 500 people above the ideal district. So there's not much change that my district will undergo over the next redistricting cycle.
okay, well, that's good to know. Since you also mean like population, does it also affect like it can also be like on a racial level as well?
It could, yes. If you have to lose areas of your district, you could potentially, for example, my district is 48% African American, and let's say I lost population, which is the case with a lot of districts up north.
Hmm.
That means that my district has to expand, and if I had to expand, that means I have to go get other precincts and other areas geographically to help replace the lost population. Well, if I have to expand, then I would, if there aren't African Americans living
Hmm.
around to basically pick them up to maintain my district as being a majority Black district, which is a district
Hmm.
that is protected under the Voting Rights Act, then I could very well end up losing my district or the district as a majority Black district because people tend to not live. Minorities tend to live. Some of us live together
Hmm.
in concentrated areas, but if you already have the highest concentrated area and you have to go pick up more population and they're not minority, then what ends up happening is you wind up diluting your district, and your district may probably no longer be a majority minority district or majority African American district. So
Hmm.
it changes politically the dynamics of the district.
Well, that makes a lot of sense how you explained it, because the population will change if that end up happening. And people, when we come on a racial level, people think different and they have different needs and wants and desires, correct?
That's correct. Yes. I mean, just as an African American, I can tell you the needs of my community of being an African American are different from probably the needs of the Hispanic community or the Asian American community or even the white community. We're just different. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. I think that's what actually makes us stronger is that
Hmm.
we bring a different confluence of values and worldviews and we bring them together. And that's a source of strength. But the problem is that when basically we don't allow for representation of everybody, you know, to participate.
Hmm.
That's kind of been the problem that we've had, the lack of representation amongst all minority groups having their
Hmm.
seats at the table.
Yes, seats at the table is very important, because when you have somebody seat at the table, that means they could speak up for their group of people.
You're right. You're exactly correct.
What is your perspective on redistricting overall?
My perspective is for political lines to be drawn in a fair and equitable manner, one that increases, people of color's, participation in the political process, being able to serve in government, because what you want to see in a representative body, you want to see the diversity. You want to see the body be as diverse as the people of this state,
Hmm.
because from all different walks of life, whether it's black or brown, rich and poor, gay, straight, disabled, not, middle income people, to wealthy, to retirees. You want to see everybody because everybody has something to offer, and
Hmm.
when everybody's bringing their different perspectives, I think it makes us better. I mean, I grew up I'm a black male in Louisiana. I
Hmm.
went to Archbishop Shaw High School. My life experiences are different than somebody who probably grew up in rural Louisiana. And when I have an idea or someone else has an idea, and you bring it before the body, well, you know, you don't tend to think how your ideas would affect other people. So when you have people who are different from you, they can voice their concerns or share their opinions, and you say, you know what, I never looked at it from that perspective because I can't, because I never walked a day in your shoes, you
Hmm.
know. And I say, and also women too, but you can't draw districts, for gender to support one gender or another because it's just impossible. But
Yes,
I want to include that because I don't, as a man, I don't know what it's like to be a woman, never will,
correct.
but you know living in this society as a woman, they deserve to have a seat at the table and to
Hmm.
voice their concerns because maybe there's something I just don't see coming from my perspective and my privilege as a male. So that's why you want to have diversity of people, in these types of offices to bring diversity of ideas to help move the state in a forward progressive manner.
So basically, how you just explained, that's what they mean by like fair maps.
Yes, that's exactly correct. Fair maps. You want fair maps to equitably, allocate representation, across the board.
Mhm. How does redistricting affects the population of minorities in your district?
And in my particular district, it impacts our minorities because we live in a concentrated area, and we were able to draw a district to be a majority Black district. This did 10 years ago. This district was not in existence. It was a
Mhm.
majority white district, but because enough African Americans lived in, District 83, which is, the West Bank of Jefferson Parish, primarily centered in Marrero, Westwego, Avondale, Bridgeton, and Wagaman, there were enough African Americans living in the area to create a district. So
Mhm.
this district was created, in which it gave African Americans in Jefferson Parish increased representation in the Louisiana House of Representatives. We went from having one Black district or one Black state representative, then it was Rodney Lyons, to now two, myself and Representative Lyons.
Mhm. Well, that's good. I know you mentioned minority majority districts. Can you basically explain what that really means?
So when you look at the voting age population as defined by basically the Voting Rights Act and subsequent court decisions, districts that are majority minority, which means if you look at all the minorities together as a
Hmm.
plurality, if you add them up as an aggregate number, it's 50% plus one over whites. That
Okay.
makes it a majority minority district because a majority of the citizens in that particular district who are of the voting age population are majority non-white. Okay. And the other part of that is majority Black. So when
Hmm.
you have a district that is, in my case, my district is 51%. Well, I'm sorry, it's in excess of 51%, 50% plus one, then that district is a majority Black district, such as mine. My district is 58% majority Blacks, which is in excess of 50% plus one. So therefore, my district is a majority Black. So it's not only majority minority district, but it's a majority Black district.
Okay. Well, that's good to know because I didn't even know that. And actually, I'm a part of that district. So I didn't, well, I heard a majority minority. That's why I want you to explain it because that's actually a popular thing they keep saying. And then I remember when I went to the redistricting meeting, they had like a few weeks ago, people were saying majority minority. So I wanted to get the definition on it.
Yes, basically every majority Black district is a majority minority district,
Hmm.
but not every majority minority district is majority Black district. A prime example of that is House District 85, which is a Gretna-based district represented by State Representative Joe Marino.
Hmm.
As a whole, if you count all the minorities, that district is probably around 51, 52% non-white.
Hmm.
But the African Americans make up around 38 to 40% of that district. So that's not
Hmm.
quite majority, a simple majority, which is 50% plus one. The other minority population is somewhere around, 14, 15%. So that's what I mean by that district is a majority minority district, but not a majority Black district.
Okay. Hmm.
And so Jefferson Parish, we're changing lightning fast demographically. Our parish right now is 52% white, 48% non-white. So it's fairly safe to say in the next 5 or 10 years, the district, I'm sorry, I keep saying district, the parish as a whole will likely be majority minority, but we're not going to be majority Black. Because as of right
Hmm.
now, African Americans make up around 26% of the parish's population, and Hispanics themselves, make up
Hmm.
around 18% of the district. I mean, oh gosh, keep on this district of the parish.
It's okay. Well, I have a lot of listeners that's not from Louisiana. So parishes refer to Louisiana and everywhere else refers to counties, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So you're explaining yourself very well. And since you also mentioned about the minority district, what is the percent it has to be to consider that?
Courts have defined majority minority districts as districts that are 50% plus one in voting age population for a district. That is what defines a district as majority minority. If all the minorities who are the voting age population total 50% plus one, then that district will qualify as a majority minority district.
Well, that makes sense. How does redistricting work in government?
Well, from a procedural standpoint, what happens is, the U.S. Constitution requires a census to be taken every 10 years. And those
Mhm.
numbers are then, after the census is completed, the numbers are reported to the president, and the president sends it down to the states. And with that information, the states receive it, and then we use the information to undertake the redistricting process. And it's basically a numbers driven process. We have demographers that will consult with legislators. And when we have a redistricting session, as we will have on February 1st, we'll take those numbers and we'll introduce them. We'll introduce a bill, and the bill will go through the regular legislative process and ultimately, be sent to the governor. If a majority, both chambers of the legislature agree, it's sent to the governor for the governor's ratification or his signature. If he signs it, it becomes into law, and those are the new maps for the next 10 years. If he vetoes it, then it comes back to us as a legislature, and we will have the opportunity to override his veto. If the veto is overridden, then it becomes law. If he does not sign, if he takes no action on it, then it
Mhm.
automatically becomes law without his signature after a period of time. So that's kind of how, redistricting works in government.
Well, that was really good because I didn't know too much really how it really works. So I wanted my listeners to get a little recap on how it's supposed to work. What benefits does redistricting offers to the public?
The public has the opportunity through this process and through the legislative process to make their voices heard and known, their opinions known to people like me, members of the legislature, their elected officials, as to how they think they should be represented for the next 10 years. Especially now, like this redistricting process has come so far over the last 10 or even 20 years because the public has access to basically the same tools that we as legislators have to draw maps. It used to be so expensive 20 years ago. And so, laborious 20 years ago to try to draw maps, on paper. Now, with
Mhm.
the click of a mouse or the movement of a mouse, you can draw a map, a House district or a Senate district or a congressional district. And then you can submit that to me or to us as a legislature for consideration. I will tell you that, every so often I go on these websites and I look at what the public is doing as far as drawing maps, to see what ideas they have, to see if
Mhm.
I can incorporate those into something I think could work. You know, as an elected official, I personally believe that, I'm not the smartest guy by any stretch or the sharpest tack in the box, as they say. And so I know that, no one person has a monopoly on good ideas, so I'm always looking for, ideas that are good and try to implement them to make our society better. So, I would invite them to participate, to go to the Capitol, to speak on the record. You know, we recently had the redistricting roadshow in New Orleans area. There were a number of people from the community who came out and spoke and made their opinions known to the members of the legislature. And this took place in Shreveport. It took place in Monroe, in Alexandria, Baton Rouge, Lake Charles, Lafayette. Yesterday or 2 days ago, it was in Thibodeau. It was in Slidell about a month ago. So, that was an opportunity for people to come and and to, you know, let us know what they wanted and for us to take that into consideration. And also have that opportunity during the session in a couple of weeks to do that as well. So that's how, it the benefits that redistricting offers to the public.
Well, you explained that very good because since I actually went to one of the redistricting meetings, well, actually, I went to two of them, I realized a lot of people did come out and voice their opinions, and some really knew what they really wanted to say, and then some didn't understand the process, but they still wanted to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes, and you can't expect the public is, has a whole bunch of other things going on, whether it's meeting the needs of themselves or their families, working and, not everybody has a time to really understand this process.
Mhm.
But, they just want to make sure that their opinions are known and that they're heard. And I applaud them for coming out and to doing just that over the past couple of months, really, with respect to redistricting.
So basically, since they had all these meetings just recently with the road show, they're going to, like, you all are going to take all this information and review it all and see what y'all all can do with what people were saying, correct?
Yes, I said that's absolutely correct.
Okay, now we're about to get to a really good question that I'm wondering what it really means. What does the term cracking refers to in redistricting?
So cracking means the dilution of the voting power of the opposing party's supporters across many districts. So let's say if you have a district that, let's say a district consists of 10 people,
Hmm.
okay, and you have 5 people support, you know, party A,
Hmm.
and 5 people support party B,
Hmm.
and they live in a defined geographic area. And let's say, well, no, let's go back. Let's just say 12 people, okay, because it's easier. 12 people, 6 belong to party A and 6 belong to party B. Okay. And out of 12 people, you need to get 4 districts. So that means you need, well, let's just say 3 districts. Well, 4 districts is fine. So 4 districts. And so which means you need 3 people per district, basically. Okay. Well, if basically most of the districts, let's say two, my math is horrible, but maybe 2 or 3 of the districts have 1 person from party A and 2 people from party B,
Hmm.
that means you have 3 districts, give party B the majority because they have 3 elected office, 3, I guess, representatives, and 1 person being a majority in party A. That means the split is basically 3-1.
Hmm.
But you have 6 people who support party A and 6 people who support party B.
Hmm.
That's cracking, and it's also packing in certain areas. All right. And I know I'm kind of going into other areas, and we're going to talk about this. I know it's gerrymandering, but that's also gerrymandering. So
Yes.
cracking, so cracking is where you're basically splitting up people. For example, like in my district,
Mhm.
Marrero has a large concentration of African American voters, and as I
Mhm.
said before, we were able to draw a district that encompassed all of most of the African Americans in Marrero because we would be able to elect a minority, myself.
Mhm.
And cracking would be if you would basically to split Marrero in half. And so you would take what would be 58% of African Americans living in the district. You
Hmm.
split it to maybe 20 or 30%.
Hmm.
Well, then they've been cracked and dumped into another district where they're now the minority and they don't have the ability to elect someone of their choice, potentially another African American. So that's basically what cracking is. It's diluting the influence of a group of people in a particular district.
That's a whole lot to really think about. And I didn't really understand when I looked up the term cracking, so I want you to explain it. And you did a good job explaining. So basically, it's half of the existing district, and it takes some information from a previous district and merge them together, so one group won't.
You're basically trying to dilute the influence of a population of people, whether it's based on race or party affiliation. That's basically it's just voter dilution. When if you have an ability to have a group of people to create a majority to elect someone of their choice, and you basically through the political process dilute their influence, by splitting up communities of interest, then you have a situation of cracking.
That makes sense. What does packing refers to in redistricting, and why is used?
So if cracking was the dilution of influence, packing is the concentration of influence. So, for example, if you have a situation where there's a high concentration of districts, let's
Hmm.
say, and we're just using race,
Hmm.
because that's what we know here in Louisiana. If you have a, a district, for example, there's a district in Shreveport, Louisiana,
Hmm.
that is almost 90% Black.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, that's a classic case of packing because that district is so concentrated with African Americans. African Americans can elect somebody of their own choice, with 90%. Don't necessarily need to have that high of a concentration of African Americans to be able to elect a Black in that district. So when you pack people, whether it's Democrats, Republicans, whatever, of a political group into a district so high, the opposite of that is it makes the other districts less diverse. And so that is basically what packing is the concentration of the opposing party's voting power in one district to reduce their voting power in other districts. Okay, so if my district is 90% and there's a white district right next to me, that district is probably going to be 90% white,
Hmm.
and 10% Black. Whereas if you had a district that was basically 50-50, you know, everybody, both Black and white or Democrats and Republican, would have a reasonable shot at impacting the outcome of both races as opposed to just one or the other.
That's really interesting. At the bottom line, you realize you really have to pay attention to really what's going on because it can just all of a sudden just happen.
It can, and you'll wind up, a couple of years later, like, how did this happen? Because it just happened under our noses. We
Hmm.
weren't paying attention.
Why does redistricting affects the schools for children?
Well, in Louisiana, schools, public schools, that is, are governed by school boards, which are, political subdivisions that are comprised of elected members to the school board. And school boards, like the legislature and Congress, those political districts have to be tweaked or redrawn every 10 years. And so, school board members, impact policy directly related to public schools.
Hmm.
So that's how, redistricting impacts um, public schools in our area. If the population shifts in a particular school board or in school board districts, then you have to change it to make it balanced and fair. So I think that's what's going to happen with the school board when they undertake their redistricting for their districts in probably the next couple of weeks.
Well, I like how you just explained that question. Why do you think redistricting has become a problem instead of a solution for states?
It's become a problem because the parties have used it as a means to maximize their power for whatever reason that is, and it's particularly been running rampant with, in my opinion, with Republicans over the past 10 years through the process of gerrymandering. You look at states like North Carolina, which is a very competitive state from a partisan standpoint. Democrats compete very well. I would say it's a purple state or maybe leaning Republican just slightly. But, a generic Republican candidate against a generic Democratic candidate, it's going to be very close. We're talking 52-48. But let's say if you have, 20, and I don't think they have this, but just use an example. If you have 20 House seats to the U.S. Congress in, let's say, North Carolina, that is basically a toss-up state. But the Republicans control, let's say, 15 seats, and Democrats control the other 5, but it's a toss-up state. You probably have some gerrymandering going on. And that's not necessarily fair, because when you have districts that are skewed in favor of one group or one political party over another, then what that does is it doesn't allow for compromise to take place, because what you have is two extremes. Like if you have a district that is 90% white, do you think that the person who represents that 90% white district has to care or give concern to the needs of the citizens who belong to the 10% minority? No, they don't.
No.
Whereas if you had a district that was 50-50, 50% white and 50% minority, then the person who represents that district has to give good care and good representation to everybody in the district, and it forces people to be moderate and to kind of operate within what I call, within the numbers, of a football field. You're not outside the numbers, you're inside the numbers. And so I think that's when you have that, it also fosters compromise amongst people, a willingness to get along with one another, as opposed to everybody, kind of retreating back to, their sides. And that's kind of what we've seen, both in the legislature and state houses or in senates or state legislatures across the country and in Congress. Our politics has become more polarized for that reason.
Yes, it really has. Well, since I also heard you mention the word gerrymandering like twice, do you mind explaining what that is?
Sure. Gerrymandering refers to the political manipulation of electoral district boundaries with the intent of creating an undue advantage for a party, a group, or a socioeconomic class within a constituency. So, typically you have to adhere to certain principles when drawing a district. Number one, it has to be contiguous. It has to connect. You can't have a precinct in one area, have another district, and have it pick back up on the other side of that district. It has to be connected together. And it also has to be compact. You can't have a district that looks like, you threw a bowl of spaghetti on the wall and, how the spaghetti looks on the wall is how a district is drawn. You can't do that either. It has to be kind of compact, like a square or a rectangle, something like that, or you know, not necessarily looking like a salamander,
Hmm.
because that could be a case for gerrymandering. You know, so that's gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is the overall theme, but within gerrymandering, you have cracking and packing to
Hmm.
establish a basis for gerrymandering.
And also, since you mentioned and you explained gerrymandering very good, that seem to happen a lot in some states.
It happens across the country. You know, people want political power, and they'll do whatever they have to do to get it. Unfortunately, and so that's something that we're trying to fix in this state, in this country as a whole.
Yeah, I believe it should be fixed because really, if you look at the population these days, it's very diverse in every aspect, like across the board. It's like there's different races now, and everybody is like merging. So everybody got different views, but they kind of coming about the same now.
I agree. I mean, probably just as a case in Louisiana, the country as a whole, I think the country is around 58% white for the first time in its history. The city is below 60% white, and you know, 42% non-white. So in 10 years, our politics are going to be changing, and we need to make sure that everybody has adequate representation. You shouldn't skew the lines to make it to where only one party or only one group of people can keep all their seats at the table or have all the influence and all the power. We need
Hmm.
to make sure we're diverse and that everybody has a seat at the table and everybody has their fair share of influence and access to the policymaking of this country and its state.
And I agree with that. I really do because it's really changing. It's like changing every single day.
Absolutely, and to bring it home, you know, another reason why it's so important is because the people we elect are the people who, you know, introduce or repeal the policies that we think ought to be changed. Whether if you're for police reform or you know enacting policy that would you know help address climate change or student loan debt, um, you know everything. The term is hinged upon who gets elected to office,
Hmm.
and and if so, the same people are getting elected to office who don't necessarily think or agree with the way you think or believe what you believe, then your views will never be manifested into actual policy. So we'll keep continuing to get the same things that we've always gotten, and nothing will change.
Hmm.
So that's why redistricting is so important, because you want to make sure that you have fair representation.
And I believe more now that you might start getting more fair representation because the way how the population really is now, like across the board, like in all 50 states really is, there's more a diverse culture, like in and way of thinking and living.
Yes, it is. I mean, the younger we go, you know, I don't. We belong to the same generation, so
Hmm.
we look at things differently than our parents. You
Hmm.
know, I'm sure our parents looked at things differently than their parents, and so on and so forth. And I know that the generation coming after us will look at things differently than us,
Hmm.
and that's just the ever changing of our demographics of our country, which is a good
Hmm.
thing.
Yes, it's a really good thing. How are you helping to change redistricting in Louisiana?
So I've been working with groups in the community to make sure that Jefferson Parish can take advantage of the growing diversity of this parish and this state to try to create more opportunities for people of color to get elected to offices across this parish. As in my, especially my position as a state representative, trying to make sure that that applies across the board to this state. That's basically how we as members of the legislature, you know, have an influence on redistricting. And I also have a vote too. I have a vote on any plans that are introduced. And I also have the ability to introduce my own plans, my own ideas as to what and how I think, these districts should look. And so let's say, I have a constituent whose name is Michael Holmes, has an idea as to how he thinks some of these districts should look. He can contact his senator or his representative to get them to try to introduce a plan. And so that's something that I have the ability to do that the average citizen does not have, to do.
Okay, well, that makes some sense. I like how you explain what you've been really working on to talk about redistricting and how you also help in the community as well. How can a person educate themselves on the process of redistricting?
Well, there's a number of websites that you can go to educate yourself on the redistricting process. The main one is the state's website related to redistricting, which is redist.legis.la.gov. You can also go to fairdistrictsla.org. You can go to louisianaprogress.org/redistricting. You can go to the Power Coalition's website for redistricting, which is redistrictinglouisiana.com. The Urban League also has a redistricting website, urbanleaguela.org/redistricting. And if you wanted to draw your own districts for the state or your community or your parish or what have you, you can go to davesredistricting.org. That's DAVES redistricting, REDISTRICTING.org. So those are a couple of useful tools and websites that the average citizen can go to kind of help familiarize themselves with this redistricting process.
When you did talk about redistricting, how to help in a state, and you was mentioning about the different websites, since I have listeners outside of Louisiana, do you know websites people can go to that's outside of Louisiana, like majority one? If not, it's okay.
They can try to go to I don't know the specific website, but Fair Districts, I think .org is a website, or just Google Fair Districts. And you'll pull up the website, and you'll have Fair Districts has auxiliary websites for the different states, like Fair Districts Louisiana. There's Fair Districts Texas, things like that. Or you can just Google redistricting, and you'll pull up a whole bunch of websites, from different states, and just casually scroll and click, and you'll learn something that could be pretty interesting.
Well, thank you for explaining that. Well, since you really mentioned all those websites, that lets you know how technology has changed over the years to allow people to actually inform themselves and get involved more.
That's correct. Absolutely.
Well, before this interview, and because I'm actually done with the questions, I want to actually talk about what is your job as a state representative in your district, and what is your future goals in the district?
So the job of a state representative, the bare basic job, is to introduce legislation in hope of turning it into meaningful public policy, and to vote on pieces of legislation. That's the bare basic job as to what a legislator does. A legislator legislates. And so one thing I hope to accomplish with this district, District 83, that I've been fortunate enough to represent for the last 2 years, is to make sure that everybody, people of color, poor people, women, um, just have access to the American dream. I believe that, you know, we talk about, or we've heard over the past couple of years under different presidential administration about America being great. You know, America is not great because it's something that you're just born into. It's not given through birthright or through citizenship. It's something that, what makes us great is our values. That if you work hard, you play by the rules, then you could have your piece of the American dream. But what we've known over the, you know, many centuries that this country has been the 2 centuries that this country's been in existence, that American dream has not been obtainable to certain groups of this country. And so what I
Mhm.
would like to do is to make sure that I can do whatever I can do within my power to make sure that that American dream is something that everyone can have access to, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of what zip code you're born in, your socioeconomic status, regardless of who you love. That you have your fair shot. And that's what I hope to accomplish for my district.
Well, I like how the good ideas that you mentioned that you're working on, and also your future goals as a state representative.
Thank you so much.
I can tell you really enjoy your job because when I like see you in the community, you like to introduce yourself, let you know that you can help people in the community, and that you will be there if possible.
I do, man. Like it's, I would tell you, it is the honor of a lifetime to serve you and our community. It really is, and it's a humbling experience, to be able to serve your community and to help people. You know, I cannot explain it. And you would think something like this would get old,
Hmm.
but I would tell you, every time I walk into that Capitol, I still get goosebumps. You know, it's like it's a never ending dream that you get to represent people to help make their lives better for them in the halls of government. I tell you, it's like something that it just never gets old. And you think that, it's a dream that you'll wake up from, but I'm, I haven't woken up yet, you know?
Well, we have came to the end of this interview. I want to ask you, so what you thought about the interview?
Oh, it was good, man. I enjoyed it.
So what you thought about the questions?
I did. They were very insightful, very insightful. And I had to do a little bit of research on them just to get you some, academic answers to them. But yeah, they were good. They were really good. So, and I think, hopefully your listeners, when they hear it, they'll be able to understand it at their level, not something that's,
Hmm.
over their head, at a basic elementary level. So I think
Yes.
we've done that.
Yes, I'll be focusing on for everybody can understand at every level
Yeah.
because when you go too high, basically you start like confusing people. And I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
like educate people. So I want to bring it down for everybody to understand. And if they have questions on themselves, they can also look into it as well.
Right. I agree.
How can someone contact you for more information?
I can be contacted by visiting the House of Representatives website, where there's a profile that will give all of my office information. The website is house.louisiana.gov. I also have a couple of social media platforms. On Facebook, I can be reached at my Facebook page at Rep Kyle Green for Facebook. For Instagram, it's at Rep Kyle Green, and the same for Twitter at Rep Kyle Green, if anyone wants to contact me in the future.
Well, thank you with this information. I'm glad you was a part of Consulting Between Friends podcast.
Well, thank you, Mike.
Thank you. In closing, I hope the listeners have a better understanding of the process of redistricting in a state. Also, understand how gerrymandering works in a state and how it affects the outcome of an election. Gerrymandering may be a problem, but I hope that I was able to educate the listeners how it is important to pay close attention to the elections in your state. One last thing. Remember to support Black business owners and continue to educate yourself on the election process in your state. In honor of Black History Month, I'm introducing 5 facts of African Americans in Black history. Ava DuVernay, born August 24th, 1972. A director, producer, writer, and film distributor. Known for Queen Sugar TV series, When They See Us miniseries, The 13th documentary, Selma, the movie, and Colin in Black and White. Oprah Winfrey, born January 29th, 1954. Producer, talk show host, actress, philanthropist, entrepreneur. Oprah Winfrey Show. The Color Purple movie. Lee Daniels, The Butler movie. Selma movie. The Immoral Life of Henrietta Lacks movie. A Wrinkle in Time movie. Greenleaf TV series. Harpo Films. Interview specials. Television specials. Multiple TV series. Oh, the Oprah Winfrey Magazine. Oprah Winfrey Network, known as OWN, acronym OWN. Oprah.com. Tyler Perry, born September 14th, 1969. A director, actor, producer, writer, and entrepreneur. Known for Madea movie franchise, Madea's Family Reunion movie, The Pains TV series, Tyler Perry's Assisted Living TV series, The Oval TV series, The Haves and the Have-Nots TV series, A Fall from Grace movie, Good Deeds movie, For the Colored Girls movie. Tyler Perry's Why Did I Get Married? Movie. Why Did I Get Married to? Movie. I Can Do Bad All by Myself. Movie. Daddy's Little Girls. Movie. Gone Girl. Movie. Don't Look Up. Movie. Multiple TV series. Tyler Perry Studios. Nicole Hannah Jones, born April 9th, 1976. Domestic correspondent for the New York Times Magazine. Known for the 1619 Project, which is available by podcast and a book. Multiple awards as a journalist. Howard University professor. Kamala Harris, born October 20th, 1964. First African American and South Asian Vice President of the United States. First graduate of HBCU in the White House. Former District Attorney of San Francisco. Former California Attorney General. Former California United States Senator. What's going on in the news? The Omicron variant is high in the United States. To stop the spread of COVID, the Biden and Harris administration is now offering free at-home testing kits to the public. The public can place an order online for the at-home testing kits. Only one person by household can order the at-home testing kits at the same location. The government is offering 4 test kits to each place of residence. After placing your order, you will receive a testing kit by mail from the post office. The website is covidtests.gov. This web link will be available in the podcast notes under What's Going On in the News. In Louisiana, for the midterm elections, the Senate race is up for grabs. The midterm elections take place in November. The person is Gary Chambers, a Democrat who is running to be the next senator for Louisiana. Right now, John Kennedy, a Republican, has this Senate seat for Louisiana. Gary Chambers has a controversial ad running right now. In the ad, he is smoking marijuana, known as weed. He is showing that multiple groups of people smoke weed, but it affects the minority population the most who pays the price for smoking weed. When I mean minorities, I am talking about Black people. He also discussed the justice system overall. This controversial ad surfaced multiple news outlets and has gone viral as well. You can click the links about Gary Chambers in the podcast notes under What's Going On in the News. Thank you for listening to Consulting Between Friends. This podcast is available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts, as well other platforms that are available. So like and subscribe. Need to contact us and leave us a comment? You can find us on Instagram at Consulting B Friends. Once again, Consulting B Friends. An email address is consultingbfriends@gmail.com. Once again, consultingbfriends@gmail.com. Consulting Between Friends now has a way for listeners to share their feedback about the podcast. The listeners can now share their feedback on Discord. The link will be available in the podcast notes and on the podcast website. Consulting Between Friends. Thanks to everyone for making this possible. The host, Michael Holmes Jr., and co-host Shay R. Jones. The producer and content creator, Michael Holmes Jr. The artwork cover, Michael Holmes Jr. Original music, a DJ named Slash. References, Brennington Center for Justice. The New York Times. Special guest, Kyle Green Jr., State Representative of District 83. Content distributor, Power 77 Radio.